Welcome to today's webinar. If someone could just chat that you can both hear and see us. And we're going to give it 1 more minute to get a couple other people able to sign on. And there is a little bit of a delay between the chat feature and what we see on our end. So again, if someone could just type that you can hear and see me. Great, thank you.
There it is. Okay, thank you. Here it comes.
Awesome. Well, welcome again. We have about 76 people on right now, so I think we're going to get started. I did alert everybody that we were going to begin promptly. Welcome to today's webinar, virtual shortlist interviewing from surviving to thriving. I'm Nicole Peterson. I'm the Director of Marketing for Flowtech Inc. and the SMPS Connecticut President. So again, thank you for attending. For optimal viewing, we encourage you all to close out any unnecessary browsers. As you can see, this platform is in a browser, and the more tabs you have open, the more chance there is for us to be a little wonky or there to be a delay. So go ahead and close out any unneeded browsers. Everybody is muted, and obviously you can't see any of the other attendees besides myself and Gilda. And we are going to take a couple breaks throughout the presentation for questions, but if you have any during the presentation, feel free to type them in the chat, which is, I believe, on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you could indicate that they are a question versus a comment, that would be very helpful. And how you do that is next to your comment, there's a little, oh, sorry, this is a mirror image. There's a little circle. And if you tap that circle, it'll appear as a red Q to indicate that you have a question. And it'll just help me identify that a little bit easier. We are also going to be doing a couple polls, and we're going to have a handout throughout the duration of the presentation, which will also appear in the bottom portion of your chat feature. So be on the lookout for that. I'd like to start by thanking today's sponsor. The webinar sponsor today is Gilbane. So thank you very much for showing your support and sponsoring today's webinar as well as next week's webinar. I'd also like to thank our annual sponsors. Without you guys, this program year would not be what it has been, and we greatly appreciate you pivoting with us into the digital world. So thank you very much. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Gilda Bonanno. And Gilda is a professional speaker, consultant, and facilitator who serves as a trusted advisor to executives and entrepreneurs to transform their communication, presentation, and leadership skills. Since 2006, she has run her own business and worked with executives and entrepreneurs on 4 continents, from Chicago to Shanghai and Rio to Rome, including GE, Travelers, Praxair, Assa Abloy, Wells Fargo, and Yale University. Gilda has delivered thousands of in-person presentations. Her YouTube channel has received over 2 million views, and her digital newsletter has reached subscribers of over 45 countries since 2008. Gilda has been a longtime friend of SMPS Connecticut, and she has hosted our networking skills workshop in 2017, and she's also been the Max Talks presenters coach since we brought Max Talks to our chapter. So it is my pleasure to welcome Gilda yet again. And Gilda, thank you so much for being here and presenting on this topic today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Nicole. I'm so excited to be here with you virtually. I know that you can see me. I can't see you, but I'm imagining you all sitting at your computers at home, most of you. Maybe some of you are back in the office. So welcome, and thank you for taking the time out of probably what's your lunch hour to spend a little bit of time with us and learn about how to make these virtual shortlist interviews not just something you do because now we're doing virtual, but something you do well. So it becomes a competitive advantage. So I want to give you practical tips that you can use tomorrow for your next virtual shortlist interview or any kind of virtual meeting or presentation that you have to do. So we're going to look at 3 steps in this process. We're going to look at what do you do to prepare for that interview or meeting or presentation? What do you do during it when you're presenting? And then what's the follow-up? So hopefully you'll walk away with some practical, useful tips that you can put into play to be more comfortable and effective doing these virtual shortlist interviews. So let's take a look at our first poll. So we're going to try out our polls. We're getting a really good use here. So the poll will be found in your chat. So if you make sure you have the chat window open on the right, you have an opportunity to answer the question: how many virtual shortlist interviews or work-related video meetings and presentations have you participated in since the pandemic started? So let's take a look at the poll there. It's in the chat. Let's see if people are responding. Yep, I see the responses coming in right now. Give you a moment to do that. And then Nicole, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and end the poll and tell me what the survey says, as they used to say on TV.
We are getting a few more responses, so I'm just gonna,
Wonderful.
okay.
Yeah, people are finding it. As with any technology, it's really getting comfortable with what does this button do and what is this tab? And so we appreciate you playing along at home and trying to learn this along with us.
Okay, I'm gonna end the poll now, and it should publish the results in the bottom right of your chat screen.
Okay, so how many have you participated in? So 43% of you have participated in 1 to 5, either virtual shortlist interviews or work-related meetings and presentations on video. 14% have said none. Okay, so you've been able to hide at home. That's good. And 17%, 6 to 10, and 25% of you have done more than 10. And so this sounds like for many of you, this is the new way to work. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to do this yet, your chance will come, because even as we open up, I'm hearing from many organizations and companies that they're asking people to still work from home, and people certainly aren't traveling to meetings the way they used to. And so this skill is going to be necessary for you. So thanks for participating in the poll, and let's get started with the first step, which is prepare. So I like processes. My corporate work, I was a project manager, and I ran projects focused on processes, process re-engineering kind of projects. And so we always worked in steps. So I'm encouraging us to think of this 3-step process just to make it easier for us. So the step 1, which is prepare. What do you do before that virtual shortlist interview? This is actually the biggest step. It has the most pieces to it. It has the most context to it. And so let's get started. So before you jump into technology, because often we say, okay, is it your Zoom? Is it my webinar jam? Is it Skype? What are we using? Before we do that, we have an important question, an important sentence to complete. The purpose of my meeting or presentation, in your case, shortlist interviews, is to fill in the blank. Is it to sell? Yeah. Is it to inform? Perhaps. How about persuade? Yeah. If you want them to hire you, if you want them to work with you. Sometimes you're just updating. Sometimes you're entertaining. So you want to be crystal clear about your purpose, because that drives everything else that you do. And by the way, don't forget, the purpose is also always to build the brand. So every time you get on camera, not only are you talking about your content, but you're building the brand. Your personal brand as well as the company's brand, how you look, what you say, how you're prepared. And again, I'm not trying to make you more nervous, but I am trying to have you realize this is a wonderful opportunity. If you do these well, you're building the brand in a positive way. All right, so always think about this question, and then think about what's the best medium. You're marketers. You understand this. You understand the channel matters. So sometimes video works best. Here we're doing a combination video and screen share with slides. Sometimes that serves you. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the phone is just fine. Right? Sometimes if you're just conveying information quickly, do you really have to make people get on video, clean up their backgrounds, maybe, brush their hair, ladies put lipstick on, whatever it is? That's not always needed. So think about what's the purpose, and then what's the best medium to serve that purpose, to achieve that purpose? How do I best get the message across? Once you make those 2 decisions, now we can talk about technology. So technology, remember, should serve us, not the other way around. So it should serve our purpose, not the other way around. We should be able to control it to an extent possible. So let's go through several ideas and tips to remember when you are thinking about the technology. And by the way, as Nicole said, we will have a handout that we're going to send to you via chat about midway through. So don't worry about needing to write all this down. All this and more is going to be in that handout. So before you turn on the video camera. You have to make sure that you've reduced background noise. And this can be challenging as we're working from home and maybe multiple people in your house are sharing space with computers and internet and background. And so try to reduce the background noise. So turn off your phone, silence any Alexa or Google Home or other devices that might go off with timers, silence anything else in the space if you can. It's not always possible. If you have a door, close it and put, mommy's on video or daddy's on video if you have other folks in the house or kids. So see if you can reduce the background noise. And then, as Nicole said, turn off the other applications. That does two things. One, these video technology software platforms tend to be very memory and bandwidth hungry. So turning off other apps allows you to give most memory and most bandwidth to the video. Secondly, you're less likely to be distracted. If you don't have your Facebook notification or your email notification popping up, you're more able to focus on communicating as opposed to looking down. Oh, here's my phone. What's going on here, right? That's very distracting, both for you and the people you're talking to. The camera should really be at eye level. And often, if you have a laptop, the camera's pretty low, and you see people presenting. Actually, in this case, it's hard to do because my camera is at eye level. But oftentimes, you'll see people either presenting down to the camera or up to the camera. You want to be at eye level. So if you need to, stack some books onto your laptop. You don't have to do anything fancy. Stack some books under the laptop. In my case, I have an external camera that's attached to my external monitor that's mounted on a monitor arm on a standing desk. So I have the option of adjusting height on the standing desk and the monitor arm. But easy solution is just put some books, in the old days we'd say get the phone book, but get some big book, directory book, coffee table book, pile the laptop on it so the camera is at eye level as opposed to you sitting with it on your lap and then looking down at it. A good mic and speakers are critical. Often your onboard mic and speakers are just fine, but you want to test those and make sure. I'm using an external microphone because this is my job, this is my business, this is my brand. And so for me, it made sense to invest in that. But often your onboard mic is fine, but make sure the audio is clear and then it doesn't pick up room noise and ambient noise if possible. People will forgive poor video quality, but poor audio is really hard to overcome. So make sure that the audio is clear. And the only way you can do that is by testing it. I have a little voice recording device on my computer. I open that up, I test it, listen to the playback, and then Nicole and I practice, of course, so she can tell me whether or not my sound is clear. The background should be appropriate. Now, what does appropriate mean? No laundry. And I say that jokingly, but I've actually seen laundry hanging in the back. So appropriate background. Here I have a bookcase, that's fine. You might have a blank wall, a door, that's okay. It's just something neat, non-distracting. You don't need to put the logos up. Sometimes the virtual backgrounds that you attempt to use in Zoom or other programs, they don't always work well if you don't have a green screen. And so it can look kind of funny. I was watching one this morning where the person's ear looked like it was coming off and on because the virtual background couldn't tell where the head ended and the background began. So you really want to just think about what looks good, what looks neat. If all else fails and you don't have some place to present a clean, unwrinkled sheet, like a bed sheet, you could hang it, but it has to be unwrinkled because otherwise the wrinkles show. In a dark color, solid color, be fine. The light ideally should be behind the camera. So in this picture, she is in a common situation, right, where the lights, the windows are to the side of you, and that's okay. But it's really challenging if you're presenting with a window directly behind you. If that's your setup, close the blinds, close the curtains, try to block that light because otherwise you're going to have all this light behind you. You want the light to be in front of you. So move a desk lamp or a table lamp or whatever you have, a key lamp. I have an external key lamp attached to the desk, but just a regular old lamp from one of your other rooms, put it behind the camera. You want diffuse light on your face so you don't have a ton of shadow, and that's all you need. So it's nothing expensive or fancy, but you do have to think about that setup. This should go without saying, but you know what? I'm sure you've all seen people on these calls who don't bother to groom themselves. So shower and get dressed, as the news anchors say, from the desk up, right? So I don't care if you're wearing shorts, it doesn't matter. And you guys right now, you're not on camera, you can wear whatever you want, but if you're presenting, You want to make a good impression. What would you wear in person to meet those potential clients? Wear that for the camera, and be mindful that, again, you're building their brand. Test everything twice, 3 times, because something will always go wrong. And so you want to test and make sure you've eliminated as many possibilities as you can. Now, things will go wrong. What's your plan B, your plan C, your plan D? So Nicole, who's amazing at this role, she has made sure that if we go down with Webinar Jam, if for some reason, even though I'm hardwired to the internet, if this crashes, she has a Zoom meeting room ready and waiting for us to go into. And she has a designated person to stay here in Webinar Jam in case it comes back up, to direct any latecomers to go to that Zoom room. So she's thought about plan B and C because, of course, on one of these webinars, that exact thing happened and you had to scramble. So she's added it to her checklist. So think about that. Often what I do is I have my cell phone ready, and I might have the software ready on the cell phone. So let's say Zoom, I might have Zoom installed and ready to go in case my internet goes down in my house. My cell phone runs off a cellular network, not my Wi-Fi, so I could alternate and go onto that. It's not ideal, but I make sure that somebody else has my slides. So Nicole has my slides in case you lose me, she can upload the slides in the meantime. So just thinking about that, because all of this is, you're trying to do it so you're calm, so you can focus on your discussion, your content, your pitch, your selling, not so you can worry about the technology, right? And never forget the why. Why should they hire you? Why should they go with you? Why should they select you? Why do you want to work on this project? Why do you want this opportunity? Always go back to that. So don't let the technology drive and confuse you from focusing on the why. So in terms of your content, what you actually say on virtual, less is more. Less is more. We need to be shorter. You have to cut out non-essentials. You have to be concise and more focused. You have to not leave prep to the last minute, because when we leave prep to the last minute, we end up with too much stuff, too much material, too many bullet points, too many slides, too much to cover, and it becomes long and overwhelming and frankly boring. So less is definitely more when you're doing this virtually. So practicing matters. Nicole and I did a run through last week. We practice. I insist that anybody who wants me to do a webinar actually has a practice session with me. But I would recommend, if you're going to practice, practice out loud. So don't just sit at your desk and look through your materials. Okay, here was the response we sent. Here's the RFQ. Okay, here's what we said. Here's our, the sector. We've done this before. No, you've got to speak it out loud because it sounds different. You especially should practice. What do you say first? What do you say last? And how do you get from one point to the other? Because that's often where we get tripped up or forget. You also want to practice answering those FAQs. So you've done shortlist interviews before. You know what clients want to know, right? Obviously, they want to understand pricing and payment and warranty. They want to understand your capabilities. Have you done something like this before? Your recommendations, overhead. You know the list of questions they're going to ask you. Prep for those, particularly the ones you would hate to be asked out loud on camera, because I guarantee you're going to be asked out loud on camera. So just thinking about all of that and prepping it ahead of time will make you way more comfortable and confident in the moment. And if you're presenting as a team, which I know often you are, right? You might have the project manager presenting, you might have the principal presenting, you could have several other people from the team presenting. Normally in person, you would run through it, you could wave to each other, you could even kick each other under the table, but you don't have any of that virtually because you're not co-located. So decide now who says what, who opens, who closes, how you handle questions, and practice together on video. If this is important enough, and I would consider a shortlist interview a high stakes presentation, right? Because you want the job, you want the contract, you want this person as a client or this company or this project. So that's high stakes. Take the time to present ahead of time. And that may mean getting the project managers and the marketing team and the subject matter experts and everybody else together. Yeah, and that's hard, but it's better than having something go wrong the day of because you forgot to tell people what they were saying. So figure out particularly how you're going to handle those questions. if it's just a question, does somebody just jump in, or does one person allocate the question and say, Nicole, why don't you answer that? Jess, why don't you handle that one? Right? Because you want to look like a coherent team. If you can't work together well on the interview, how are you going to work together well on the project? So you're demonstrating your collaborative abilities or lack thereof. All right, so let's now take our second poll. So you're all skilled at this. So Nicole, if you can load it up in chat and answer the question, do you find virtual meetings and presentations easier or harder than in person? I'm really curious. I am really curious. So you see me not looking at the camera now because I'm looking here in the chat just to see what it looks like. All right, so I'm waiting to see the answers as they come in.
It was funny, Gilda. At first, it was 100% harder, but then
that was one person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, we're still getting there. This is great. Thanks everybody for playing along here at home.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll. It looks like it's evening out a little bit.
Okay, so how many people find it harder to do this virtually? 47% of you find it harder. 20% find it easier, interesting, and 32% about the same. Yeah, when I've asked that question on other webinars around virtual meetings and presentations, it's pretty much the same split, right? So there's a couple of things that make this easier, but a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, a lot of technology, a lot of coordination, collaboration that makes this a little bit harder. So if you're finding it harder, you're not alone, and if you're finding it easier, great. You can become the expert for your team and your company. It can become a new skill that you have as part of your brand. That's wonderful. All right, so now let's go to the easier part. The prep is the harder part because you have to do all that ahead of time. Now we're talking about it's the day of, it's 10 o'clock, the client's on the camera, or maybe they're just listening in, but you're on camera. Here we go. What do you do when you present to make a good impression and communicate your information? Remember, you're on air. So in the days of actual live radio, we used to say people are on air, and your voice becomes super important. Now, I know we have video to go along with the audio, but as I said, audio really almost is more important than video. So your voice has to be clear, and that's not just silence versus sound versus can they hear me, right? It's not just volume. It's also clarity. You have to enunciate more. If you're a mumbler and you talk softly, it's really hard for people to understand, right? You can't mumble and speak softly. Your voice also has to be varied. So monotone is deadly on a virtual. Monotone is terrible because it will put people to sleep. They will literally switch off, and they have a million other things that they can be doing on their desks. They don't need to watch you and pay attention. So your voice has to have highs and lows in terms of volume, tempo, pitch. So it has to have a lot of variety and a lot of energy so people can follow you and stay engaged. So you want to make eye contact through the camera. And this is challenging because if you see my eyes darting off to the side, in fact, I'm going to turn this off. I've got chat going here and you guys are chatting with each other and it's wonderful and you're putting some questions in there. But of course, every time something comes up, I look. Well, but I've got to make eye contact here with you. And so not at my slides, but at you. So practice that. And remember to monitor your facial expressions and be sure you're smiling, particularly when you're not speaking. So if you're listening to the client, they're talking about, the vendor we went with last time had these issues, or, we were happy with this. But if you're listening to somebody else talk, what is your face doing? Are you thinking like, okay, that's interesting, right? Often we're thinking and our faces look either blank or our brow is furrowed because we're considering. And this doesn't look very engaging. In fact, it looks like I'm upset, I'm mad, maybe I don't agree with you, when all I'm doing is thinking. So be mindful of what your facial expressions are doing. What are you communicating with your face while you're listening? Are you smiling at all? Right? Because a smile, you should be excited about this project. You should be happy. So the smile will reflect that. You want to be dynamic and energetic inside this box that you're in. So you're in a very limited area. Sometimes your hands aren't even visible, so you don't have a lot of gestures. So how are you able to do that? Your voice, your facial expression, and how you communicate and what's on the screen, that really helps you to be dynamic and energetic, even though you're contained in this very small box. Your filler words get exacerbated here in this medium. So the I guess, you know, so like, sorta, that gets exacerbated because your voice is crucial. Your words now are recorded. Everyone can hear them. You got a good microphone. So you want to make sure you cut these out because you will not make a great impression if every other word is, we've done this kind of project before. We did an intersection for the town of, it's really annoying to listen to, and you don't sound like you're confident, and you probably don't realize you're doing it. So just record yourself and listen and get rid of those filler words. All right, so now we're going to ask Nicole if she would do two things. If she would send the handout in the chat and also tell us what questions we've had so far. So first, let's do the handout. You're going to see it appear in the chat. It's called Checklist for Better Video Meetings and Presentations. So it's a 7-page checklist that covers everything that we're covering today, plus a whole lot more that we didn't have time for. So it covers each of the aspects, things to think about, and a checklist to go through before you do any of these video meetings and presentations. So let's make sure that's coming through. Let's see. It looks like it's coming through. If someone could just chat us and let us know that they have received this handout in the chat, just let us know, yes, I got it. Because what you're going to be able to do, it's a PDF. You should be able to click on it, open it, and then save it locally. So if somebody in the chat could just let us know that it's come through.
Yes, it's received, Gilda.
Okay, I see that. Thank you, Peggy and Catherine and George and Lindsay. Excellent. Thank you. All right, so Nicole, now that everyone has that, let's talk about questions. What questions have come through so far?
Great. We've had a few, and we've had some that aren't necessarily questions, but I thought would be something good to bring up.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you were talking about earlier was the technical side. One comment was, for most of these interviews, they don't control the platform or the tech side of it. It's the client that does. So do you have any recommendations on how to combat that, or maybe information you can get ahead of time?
Yes, that's a great comment. So I'm an exact example of that because this is my first time using Webinar Jam. I've never used Webinar Jam, and it's unlike most of the other software I use, which is WebEx, Zoom, Skype, Teams, a couple of others. Webinar Jam is different. And so that practice becomes important. Now, I know it's hard for you to say to your client, could we have a practice session? But if it's important enough and you know the potential client, see if they can do a 10-minute practice. And it's just so you can make sure you have to download, let's say there's software that has to be downloaded, because you don't want to show up for a 1 o'clock meeting at 12:55 and realize your computer has to run updates before it can install, or it can't install, or it has a different camera. So ask them if you could just do a 10-minute run through, if there's an admin or an intern or somebody that can do that with you. Barring that, if you can't do a practice, then you almost need to get a free version of that if you can and try to test it out. Ask your network if anybody has that particular software, can they practice with you? Because each one is different. Like, for example, I have a laptop and an external camera, but my laptop has a front-facing and a rear-facing camera. That's not unusual. Sometimes when I go to a certain platform, it defaults to the rear-facing camera, and I can't change it. But I don't want the rear-facing camera because that'll show you the mess in my room, right? I want the front-facing camera. So those kind of things can really trip you up. So practice, test it out. If all else fails, just show up early and see what you can do with that. So that's a great point. And I know you don't often control. I don't often control it either. Also, I would ask a series of questions. Take that checklist and just verify. Are they on video? Are you on video? Can people ask questions? How? In chat, or they can ask them via audio? Can you share documents? So go through that checklist, pick out the ones that are important to you, and then ask the client in an email, hey, here's 5 questions for you so I can do my best job presenting the information you need.
Thank you, Lisa. We also have, would you recommend having a silent person from your firm present to help moderate or troubleshoot for the presenters, similar to what you were speaking about earlier during this presentation?
Yes, always have a technical co-host. Today, my technical co-host happens to be Nicole, who's actually speaking. So I've done it both, where the technical co-host is on camera with me and talking and answering, handling the questions, but also you can have a quiet technical co-host, but it should be somebody to monitor chat, because I can't monitor chat and talk at the same time. So if chat's open, you need somebody to do that. Or if there's a technical problem, I need to be able to say, we seem to be having technical problems. Nicole, could you upload the slides for me? I'm not able to do that myself. So yeah, definitely. And you can also have a back channel with that person. Maybe you have a phone ready with text, so you can text each other and she can say, you know what, I can't really hear you, Gilda. Right. So absolutely have somebody who's helping you. And it's hard because they're not in the room with you, but it's better than not having anybody. So definitely have a co-host, have a silent attendee. And when you do a practice, by the way, if you're able to, if it's your software, don't just practice with people who have presenter role, practice also with an attendee. So when we did our practice, we had Jess and Marie attend as attendees, and Nicole and I had presenter privileges. So we could see what the real experience is like. And by the way, there's only a finite number of software packages out there. I don't know, maybe 10, maybe 15 if we count some of the little ones. So once you do this for a few months, you'll have hit all of them. And you'll be pretty comfortable and know the do's and don'ts for each of them. So the learning curve will be there, but you'll get through it. What else, Nicole?
So you touched on this a little bit, but one person was saying that it's very difficult with virtual presentations because you're not able to use body language to communicate between your presenters on your team, and then you can't read the body language of the interviewers. So how do you combat that? Like, so if an interviewer doesn't know that they didn't attend this, session and learn to smile, and they have, the resting angry face, like, how do you know if they're even listening?
Yeah, it's really tough because this video technology cuts most of you off, right? It cuts your body off, sometimes even cuts your hand off. So I would just not try to judge people from their facial expressions. And I know that that's strange for me to say, right? Because normally I say, look at their face, see if they're paying attention. Take that out. Don't use that as a clue. Put that in conjunction with other information. Are they asking good questions? And often you've not met the person before, right? So you don't know if they normally just bark out questions and don't smile. Is that their normal personality, or are they just upset with you? You don't know any of that. So just go in, assume you're doing a good job. On your side, the challenge is you can't use body language to clue in one of your team members to jump in or to shut up and stop talking. You can't use any of that. That's the harder piece. So I'm not so worried about the audience. I'm worried about you and your team. How do you communicate with each other? And that's why your internal rehearsal, even if you don't have the platform, just use a free version of Zoom or something else, just so you on camera say, oh, no, sorry, you should have said that there. Or, uh-oh, is that how you're going to open? Or, wow, we're at 10 minutes and we didn't even get to the first page of the proposal. We better shorten that up. So that is crucial. That is more important than worrying about reading the client. You can ask good questions and try to get their feedback that way, but try not to read their facial expressions. It doesn't always give you information that's accurate.
Great, thank you. And I think we'll do one more question for now, Gilda, and then we can attack the rest.
Yes, we'll take the rest in the end, absolutely.
So this is more of a comment, but maybe you can, touch upon this. So one thing that you lose is the casual interaction before and after an in-person meeting. You don't have that little networking, how's your weekend type of thing going. Yeah. So what would you recommend to help with that or to replace that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is challenging, particularly when you have more than one or two people on. If it's just 2 or 3 of us, I can start off with how was your weekend? How's it going? Something like that. But once you have 5 or 6 or 7, we get Hollywood Squares or the Brady Bunch on screen here. It's really hard to do that. You could break that into pieces. You could put some at the beginning and actually script it by saying, hey, as we're getting started, I thought it would be fun, since you don't know the team, for everyone to go and introduce themselves, and they're going to say their name, how, what they do for us, and maybe one fun thing they did in quarantine. One fun thing they did while they were home for the pandemic. So you can sort of force it in there. And then at the end, often people just want to get off and go to their next call. But at the end, you could say, let's close by, going around the room and asking people a specific question. But it's definitely harder. Which is why you have to work harder at engaging people during the video call and scheduling some follow-up, because you can't pack it all in. It becomes a little tough.
Great. Thank you, Gilda.
All right. So we'll handle more questions at the end, so keep them coming. And what we'll do now is go back to our conversation here around what do you do when you present to keep people's attention, keep them engaged. So polls, as you see us doing, because it keeps you engaged. Screen sharing. I'm sharing slides. You might have specs to share, drawings to share, brochures to share. answering questions live. Maybe you have something to demo. Maybe there's a document or a file they can download. Maybe you have props. The camera does allow you to have props in a limited size, but maybe you're showing, this size pipe versus this size pipe, and you can visually see the difference. So maybe that matters, or maybe you're showing a material is flexible or not. So think about how you can use this space to keep people awake. And of course, what helps to keep them engaged? Varying your voice, having good slides, and having a shorter presentation. All that helps as well. So when you are presenting, you want to keep your focus and not ramble. So you need to have two things in sight. You need to have a clock somewhere. Now, I happen to have it on my machine, but when I'm using other programs, the clock is hidden because I'm full screen with the video technology. So I have a visible clock on my desk so I can see the time. And then how will you use notes? All right, I'm going to show you my cheat here. I have a Post-it with a lot of good information on it, and it's stuck to my monitor. I have a couple of these around the monitor. Just with my notes, things I want to remember to ask for the poll or the handout or somebody's name or whatever it is. So you can prep these notes and have them around your monitor so you don't need to look down and fumble through your slides. And all you're seeing is the top of my head here, right? But instead, if you have notes positioned around your monitor, that'll help you stay focused. If you have to remember something, definitely put it on a Post-it. No one will tell that you're looking at the notes. Or you can even have, if you have a flip chart or a whiteboard behind the camera, stickies on the wall, Post-it paper on the wall, no one can see. So the thing that makes this easier than in person is you can have so many notes and no one sees you using them. So you look like it's the top of your head. Or rather, it's off the top of your head. All right, step 3. You finish the interview. Whew, you think it went well. They seem interested. They said they were going to get back to you. What follow-up do you do? Because normally you'd have some beautiful leave-behinds, right? You'd have shiny, glossy, multicolor brochures or spec sheets or pictures or testimonials or something. And now you just have the camera and goodbye, thanks. So go back to that question of why. What makes you or your company stand out? Is it your track record? Is it you're the cheapest? Is it your integrity? You're the safest? You're the fastest? You're the most innovative, you follow the regulations. What is it that makes you stand out? Because that's what you want to drive home in any kind of follow-up that you do. So think about something as simple as a direct-to-camera video. Because in the old days, filming a video was complicated. You needed a big camera and a lot of equipment and editing software. Now all you have to do is turn on your camera on your computer or open up Zoom or one of the other, Facebook Live, even anything, and hit record, and you can record a quick video. Something as easy as saying, thank you so much for attending our interview earlier today. As we said during that interview, we would love the opportunity to work for you in this capacity. Our customers love us because of reason A, B, and C. So I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you and hope that you will consider working with us. Thanks. Okay. Now, that was my first draft. I could have done a better job if I recorded that second time. I might have had a little Post-it note that said, here's the 3 things I want to say. But something as quick as that from somebody in that meeting. Send it to them. Say, hey, we recorded a quick video for you. How nice would that be? And you know what? Like one person on this call is going to bother to do that. I know. One person. And that one person is going to have an advantage over everybody else who said, oh, I can't do that. I want to do that. I don't know how to do that. So be that one person. And I don't mean just on this call, but often these little tricks and techniques and tips, it's not the idea, it's the implementation, because most people don't bother to do it. How about having a customized web page, okay, that says the company's name that you're trying to get the contract with. Here's the company's name, and maybe you've put the plans there or the drawings or something just for them. Maybe you have a marketing video, right? Some of you have amazing marketing teams, video teams, big budgets, complicated equipment, fantastic. Let's put something together. Maybe they get some slides and pictures of your fantastic projects or happy testimonials or video testimonials, and they put them together in a montage with music and lights and who knows. So just think creatively. What's a way to stay in someone's mind for the reasons we want? What's our competitive advantage? How do we best communicate that? And then as soon as possible, get feedback. So you personally reflect on what worked well and what didn't. Where did this interview do well? Where did you put your best foot forward? And where did things get a little messy? Maybe in the questions, maybe in who said what. If you did this as a group, can you go ahead and ask the group for feedback? let's have a quick debrief and see how everybody thinks that went. Because if you just finish it, you're never going to learn from it. And especially if there's a recording, go ahead and watch the recording. And I know that's painful. Nobody wants to see themselves on camera, but you're on camera now all the time. This is live. You're now on camera. So if you have a recording, or if you can come together as a group and say, oh yeah, you know what, that question we could have handled better. What do you think? It's a wonderful way to learn. And again, the more you do this, the easier this becomes. So make sure you get that feedback as soon as possible so you don't forget. After you've done 3 or 4 of these in a couple of days, they might all blur together. So get that feedback quickly. So you're going to be shifting between panic and calm, right? That's really what we're shifting between. And so you want to stay calm and positive and relaxed. The panic and the calm come when you look at the outside world, right? When you consider what's going on and the pandemic and everything, the panic and the calm comes. But also when you're focused on this technology, communicating with these potential customers electronically and virtually, sometimes you feel like you're doing a great job. Other times, oh my gosh, it's not working, and you panic. So try to stay calm most of the time, to be positive and relaxed. That'll go a long way towards showing that you're able to roll with it. When things go wrong, you don't get thrown, you just keep going forward. That matters more than being perfect, which is unrealistic. So as we go to questions now, I want to remind you of a couple of resources. One, you have the handout that you received, the 7-page checklist for better meetings and presentations via video. You're also going to get my email newsletter, which is going to have tips for you for communication and presentations. And that'll be tips for both virtual and in person. And then if you'd like, this free course of mine is available to download. There's no opt-in, there's no charge, but it's a 3-session course on how to deliver and develop an effective presentation over the phone. So focused on the phone aspect. So it's 3 audio recordings and then the corresponding transcripts of those recordings. So you can either read it or listen to it. And that's available just by clicking on that link. We'll send that link out to you as well. I'll send it in the follow-up newsletter, but it's a free, it's a free course that's available to you just to help out for you during this time. All right, so Nicole, let's go to questions. All right,
great.
Here we go.
So we do have a few more questions.
Wonderful.
One question is, do you recommend recording in a view that shows all team members, say 3 to 5 participants, or better to have everyone individually showing in separate screens so you can see their faces better?
So let's ask the first question. Why are we recording? So this is something that I didn't talk about here, but I talk about in the checklist. First of all, why are we recording? So just because we can doesn't mean we should. So think about, is the recording there to help you? Often you have to let people know you're recording. So is your customer comfortable if you're recording, and vice versa? So it's different if you're recording. Now, I had a client who said, I want to record, because then I want to say, hey, you agreed to this change and you said it would be fine. And now you want to, you want me to eat the cost for it, So people want to do that. They want it as a record. Okay, perhaps, but then you better be very good at cataloging and keeping track of where these recordings are, because how are you going to find that 6 months or a year later when they're saying, I never agreed to that. So just think about the recording. But if you're going to do the recording, I think the one that shows speaker view is the best. So in this case, it would be myself and Nicole. But if there were 10 other people on the screen, I'm not sure I need to see 10 other people writing notes, drinking their water, getting their pen. I'd rather just see the speaker view. Mm-hmm. Because if you're using it to reflect on how you did as a speaker, I want to see you bigger size than that little square. So I would say speaker view with screen share with slides is fine. Often you can download the chat separately if there is a chat. So that's helpful because you can look at what questions people had. And you don't always have to use chat. Obviously, if it's a small meeting and the customer has a question, they can just ask you on audio. Mm-hmm. But then you have to pause periodically and say, what questions do you have? Because it's much harder to interrupt somebody when they're talking. And they can't see you waving or, you're like, hello. And even if you have the hello or the hand raise option, people don't always see that when they're presenting.
Very true. So this one is touch on the best platform for a lunch and learn presentation that are more technical in nature. So would you recommend Zoom, Teams, Webinar Jam? Do you have a preferred platform that you would recommend?
I'll give you a good consultant answer. It depends. It's really whatever you're comfortable with and whatever you can use with ease that has the functionality you need. So if you think about what we're doing here, the value of a webinar jam is this. Nicole and I have a ton of control that you don't see. We have a ton of settings, chat, poll, slides, files, all of this that we have control with. And we can turn off your video so we're not distracted by 97 other videos, right? Even though we'd love to see you, it's hard to have 97 videos on the screen. So in Zoom, if you have Zoom meetings, it's one thing. Zoom webinar is a different product. And Zoom webinar does allow you to mimic this, less controls, less settings, but it allows you to mimic this where the audience is muted and the audience is not on camera. So I don't have a favorite. I use them all, and I frankly hate them all equally. Should I say that? I'm not naming names. Don't get that on tape. This is why you don't record.
It's recorded.
Yeah, there we go. Can we bleep that out? At least they're not sponsoring. But the point is, I hate them all. I say that in jest, but each of them has challenges. Like with any technology, each of them has challenges. Sometimes people have gone with one or the other because they think it's easier, and then they end up with some issues. So I would say, do a little bit of research, try to figure out what people in your industry are using, and then go with what works for your budget and what works for your people that you're using it for. So long answer, consultant answer. I don't have a preference. Just go with something and get good at whatever that something is that you choose. Get good at that before you try to do a lunch and learn.
Yes, definitely have practice sessions with yourself. Yes. On a quick side note, one thing that I found very helpful is even just like setting up a blank meeting in Zoom and recording myself just to see like how my face looks, different ways that I make expressions that could be distracting. So that's something just to keep in mind.
Yeah, and we have to mimic that, right? Because Webinar Jam has a green room, by the way. You folks may not have realized that, but as you were all coming into the webinar, Nicole and I were in the green room, which meant we could see each other, we could test our audio and video before we got into the live session with you. And that's really helpful. Not every software has that. Mm-hmm. If you don't have it, mimic it and do exactly what Nicole said. I do that every time. I put my own Zoom on, I start a meeting, I check the video, I put my voice recorder on, I check my audio. I do that, turn that off, and then log into whatever system I'm doing live, because sometimes there's no green room and I'm just dumped right in with 97 other people. And that would be a heck of a time to realize my audio was off, or I've, forgot to change something in the background or whatever it is.
Right. And especially like for those with children, you're playing musical wherever you are in the house.
Yes.
And you're not. So you may look different. The lighting may be different.
Right.
All that.
Right. You put the curtain up, you put the do not disturb sign, whatever you've done. And look, I think people understand we are operating in homes that were not intended for 3 or 4 people to be online doing live streaming at the same time. It's just we right, especially if you have an open floor plan house. Mm-hmm. Where do you have it? There's no doors, or you have a 2-story entranceway. It's like there's no doors, the sound carries. So you can't always control that. All you could do is, to the best of your ability, work around it and just roll with it. And I think people expect you to be professional, but not perfect. So it's okay if something goes wrong. If the other day I was on a call and somebody's cat came in, all right, or the little kid comes in. Look, it happens. Just go with it. It's fine. Like, oh, hey, you want to join the meeting? And make sure there's somebody else to help the cat or the child or the dog or whatever. Leave the room if possible. That's the reality we're working in. I think people are okay with that.
And speaking of the reality we're working with, do you think having everyone in the same room, like in the video, like in a conference room, sends a bad message that they are not social distancing, like, and following the rules? Like, what is your opinion on that? Okay.
No, I would say definitely. I mean, so I'm doing a panel next week. I'm moderating a panel. And they offered to have me come on site. Not everybody's going to be on site, but they said, if you want to be on site in our studio so it'll be me as moderator and somebody else introducing me. They said, you could do that. We could be on camera together. And I'm like, yeah, are we going to sit 6 feet apart? Is the camera going to get us 6 feet apart? Because often that's the challenge. For the camera to get us 6 feet apart, you need a very wide angle. And then the whole question about masks, and so right now, today, which is June 10, no. Now, if you want to have 2 people in and one person is just sitting silently, not on camera, and 6 feet away is a person speaking on camera, so you might have a camera person and you're the principal or the PM, that's fine. But having the team around the table right now, I wouldn't do it. Especially in your industry, you're supposed to follow the rules, particularly health and safety rules, right? You're supposed to understand how to work safely and follow the regulations. So I wouldn't take that chance right now. That could be different in a month, and it's also different depending on what state you're in, of course.
Very true. This one isn't a question, but it just kind of goes back to the silent tech person, and what somebody recommends introducing that person, just so it's not, even if they don't have a speaking role, just so they're not sitting there like, who's this silent person? You know. So I think that's something very good to do.
That's a great idea. Great idea, especially if that person's going to be in chat. If that person is monitoring, absolutely. Say, you know, with me, the team I have today virtually is. It's like Nicole on drums and Joe, no, you know, Nicole handling the questions, and you'll see Mary in the chat. She's here to help us with technology. Absolutely. Always introduce that team so they understand that you've got support in place, and so they don't wonder who the heck is this person just popping up, because Zoom bombing is a real thing, and you want to make sure your tech person doesn't get accused of showing up in chat rooms where they're not invited.
And is adding a downloadable leave behind a good idea?
Yeah, if you've got one, sure. It's likely with the handout here. Now, that's not quite a leave behind, but I could have given it to you at the end as a downloadable leave behind. Yeah, so if you've got something, definitely send it as a link, because it's one way for you to make sure people got it, as opposed to emailing it later when they might or might not open it.
Okay, I'm just scanning to see if there's any other. Okay, there's a follow-up to the question about the same room.
Okay.
How about coming to the camera one by one?
Then what's the benefit of all being in the same room? I guess, I mean, yeah, coming to the camera one by one. But then are you sitting in the same chair that somebody else just vacated and touching the table that they just vacated without gloves? I'm not loving it. Now, if you're going to stand, like you may notice I'm standing because I like to present standing. So maybe at the office, if you have the camera and you're standing and you come in and you're not touching anything, maybe that's a little easier, but I don't want you sitting in the same chair. You know, Nicole just got up from this chair. Now I'm going to sit in this chair, and I've got hands, and, you know, you see me moving my glasses or getting water and I'm touching things. That is hard to clean in between people. So no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Again, right now, that'll change, hopefully. Hopefully that'll change. We'll be able to have people sitting next to each other at some point, but just not yet. So I wouldn't bother with that. The only reason you'd ever want to be somewhere else is if you don't have camera at home, or you live in the woods and don't have good Wi-Fi and you need to be at the office because it's a better video, then you might just need to, like, I have a client who likes to present from his office because they have a T1 line. It's a great internet connection. But he's the only one in his particular office at that time. So yeah, I would just not do group stuff yet, not in the same space.
Right, and then someone commented like, we're supposed to be wearing masks and that's not good for video or enunciation or anything. So
right. In fact, I almost wrote an article, though I pulled myself back from how to speak while wearing a mask. I almost did this as an article, and I thought, no, really, I can't. But you may see it in a newsletter coming soon to you. I really, because it is about articulation. Because imagine, here we go, it's recorded, but imagine I've lost this. All I have now are my eyes. That's it. So is this happy? Is this freaked out? I don't know.
Crazy eyes.
It's really just all I have is my eyes and my voice, and diction becomes so much more challenging. And if anybody's hearing impaired, we lose the ability to read lips. It's really messy. So I would say anything you can do to not have to wear a mask and present. I had a client she was interviewed on the news, and she had to wear a mask because she had a news person with a microphone in front of her. So she had to have a mask on while she was being interviewed. Okay, we can work with it, but ideally you don't want to have to wear a mask because it makes life so much harder for the presentation piece.
Right, and I find I'm very hot when I wear the mask, like a lot.
Oh, absolutely. and my glasses fog up.
Oh yeah.
With glasses, their glasses fog up. But you know, hats off to our medical personnel who have to do that every day. I have true appreciation. One of my clients is a surgeon, and I said to her, how do you, and she wears glasses, I said, how do you 8 hours a day you're in an operating room with somebody's life in your hands and your glasses are fogging up? And, so they have ways to keep it really close to the cheek so the air doesn't go up. But really hats off to our medical team and our first responders who have to wear this all the time. And I just complain when I go to the grocery store. I mean, really, that's I got it easy.
Right. So we have another comment about like the group full conference room view. And someone thinks that it's better when people call from individual computers because it's really hard to see everybody's face from that big view. So I think we've kind of nailed it home here. Like,
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Especially if the camera is doing a pan of everybody, it's hard to see individual expressions, and it doesn't help you. It doesn't help your case to be hired. It doesn't do anything for you.
Right. So that looks like all the questions we have. Everybody feel free to type in, a couple more questions. I'll start my closing information, and if I see any other questions come through before 1:30, we will address them.
That's wonderful. And just to say, Nicole, as you're finishing up, that if you have questions we didn't cover, you'll have my contact information. You'll get my newsletter. You just hit reply, or you send it to info@jildabonanno.com, and I'll respond to you. So if a question comes up I didn't answer, or we didn't see it in the chat just because so much was scrolling, happy to answer that for you. But the bottom line is this, that shortlist interviews done virtually can be a real asset and a competitive advantage for you. Once you overcome some of the challenges about technology and the content and the follow-up, you can get comfortable with them and really use them to showcase and show off the great capabilities that you have and your company has. So don't let them be an obstacle to you. Really let it be something that allows you to build your brand even better. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy. And I look forward to actually seeing you at an SMPS Connecticut meeting in person, where we can shake hands and maybe share some food down the road. Not just yet, but let me throw it to you, Nicole, and we'll take us through our close.
Thank you, Gilda. So again, I'd like to thank our webinar sponsor today, Gilbane. Thank you very much for that. And see where my offers are. Sorry, I lost my place. Also, thank you to our annual sponsors for supporting us this entire year. And then upcoming programs, our virtual programs. So next week we have our virtual annual meeting, which it's the first of our kind. So we're going to be providing highlights of the year. We're going to be presenting our Professional Achievement Award winners with their awards. And then we're also going to be voting in next year's board. So you definitely don't want to miss that. And that's going to be in the first half hour of next week's presentation. And then it's going to be followed by a webinar, how to prosper in a virtual environment. So that's definitely something that you're not going to want to miss. And then, of course, on the 25th of June, we have our annual strategic planning retreat. That's going to be hosted by Alicia Washington, our incoming president for next year. She's going to be tackling issues on what does our world look like in a post-COVID, like how are we going to handle SMPS Connecticut programs, everything like that, as well as really focusing on some of our initiatives in our strategic planning, in our strategic plan. And then there's going to be a networking happy hour following the brainstorming portion of the event. So I hope to see you virtually all there. And I'm just going to check our chat to make sure we don't have any other questions. Yes, and that brings me to my final thing, Samantha Lee. This webinar will be recorded and available for all people who registered for the webinar. We are going to be emailing that in a couple days, along with Gilda's handout that she provided. And that pretty much covers all the slides.
Yes.
So
yeah, all the content from the slides is covered in that checklist, that 7-page checklist we just sent through the chat, but you'll also get it in that email from Nicole or from SMPS.
Definitely. And then like Gilda said, you can feel free to follow up with her directly with any other questions that may come up. And Gilda, it looks like we are getting some good comments. Everybody's thanking you and saying that it's extremely helpful. So
I'm so glad. And Nicole, special thank you to you and your whole team, and to Jess and Marie, who were our sample attendees during the practice. And really thank you to all of you for the hard work you've done to make these programs still happen, so we can still have professional development even in the middle of this pandemic. And I look forward to being together with you during better times. But in the meantime, keep doing what you're doing. Keep on keeping on, as they say, and stay safe and healthy.
And thank you to you, Gilda, and thank you all for attending today's webinar, and stay safe and stay healthy. Bye now.
Bye-bye.